Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome to this sixth running shop. Today, we'll start off by looking at the one that we were looking at last time, just briefly, which is called Start a Story, which was key 5. And then we're going to spend the rest of the session and the bulk of it really talking about key 6, which is called Step into a Moment, and the UK example, which is Lady Macbeth. So, Viv, I think the best thing to do is probably share my screen, if you can do that.
You should be able to share it, Tim.
Okay, I will do that then. Make sure everybody can see it. How's that? Can everybody see it?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, John. Just going to adjust my. I've got two screens, so I can see you, both your faces and see the slides at the same time. So that's better. So let's see if I can move the slides on. So this is the outline of the session. Start looking at, as I say, looking at key 5. I don't know if anybody's brought anything along about key 5. If anybody's had a go at key 5 and wants to talk about that. If not, I found an example of something that I could share with you. But just before I do, was anybody got anything from key 5 that they'd like to share? Okay, so this is what I found. Here, this is. I was digging around this week. I'm writing an article for Viv. It's a paper really about internal coherence, and I came across this. This is in a paper that Dorothy Heathcote wrote called "Internal Coherence: A Factor for Consideration in Teaching to Learn," and this is only a section of it, a small part of it. It's actually about 5 times as long as this. But I was thinking about examples of my own to share. But then because I stumbled across this one of Dorothy's, I thought I might show it because it shows her using that key. She wouldn't have called it that key, of course, but it's got absolutely the same elements to it in terms of the dramatic imagination and the way of imparting information, curriculum information, story information inside a engaging and exciting story or narrative. And she never. I mean, I've had a conversation with David Allen this week about whether she actually used the term narrative voice or voice of the narrator, but we can't find any examples of her actually using that term. But this is clearly a narrator's voice. This is clearly her using that technique, as it were. I won't read the whole thing, but it's just full of lovely kind of Dorothy type language. It's sort of dripping with the sorts of things that she liked to do, like to say. On the turret above the door of the great house, the watchman saw the man and knew that the warning should be sent to Lady Speck swiftly. He roused the sleeping boy and whispered urgently, pressing the seal into his hand, the sign that General Cromwell's men at last were come. The boy ran, holding the wax seal high, so all encountered would see and gather in the great stone hall. You can imagine her reading this out loud in class, can't you? She did this this context in a classroom in Canada with a bunch of secondary kids. If you're interested in reading the rest of the article, it's on the Mantle of the Expert website. As I say, it's called Internal Coherence: A Factor for Consideration in Teaching to Learn, and she lays out the whole planning, the whole thing that she did with those kids. So that's key 5. Any comments or anything that people would like to add to that?
One thing that strikes me very much, and I remember from our conversation last time we met, is the amount of action in there. It was the same in your story coming down from the airplane. Because the way I've always thought of the key before is as an establishing shot, almost without people in it, you know, just like setting a scene. But I can see in your and in my example in the book, there's I don't know that we see people. I think we are people walking somewhere, but we don't. Whereas in your key with the parascenders, with the people parachuting into the island, and in this example, I can see there's room in the storytelling for bits of action as well. And I definitely saw that in your example that you shared with me, John, this week. Yeah, your storytelling stuff, you're hooking us into the action as well. And I remember you talking about that, Elaine, as well, the value of it being action packed. Yeah, and I love that bit that it's only Dorothy can say, the sign that General Cromwell's men at last were come. It's so lovely, isn't it, that form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I say, it is long. It is really long. It's much longer than anything that I would write. I think I wouldn't necessarily have the courage to write something quite as long as she has. I remember her doing something similar, a totally different context, in a classroom in Suffolk that I watched her teach, and she spent the first sort of, I don't know how long it would have been, 30 minutes of the second session. So she set up the context, then she spent about 30 minutes reading like this, that it was a similar sort of narrative. 30 minutes just reading to these kids, and it was much longer than anything that I've ever done. I tend to do quite short bits and then move on. I don't know if it's a courage issue or just
But
think about.
stories do hold people, don't they?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
get a chance to teach yours, John? And because yours is fairly long too. Did it hold the children, or how did yours go?
Yes, I did get a chance, and I had Becky and Laura, the two classroom teachers, with me at the time, and they took on the storytelling or the atmosphere and location building, and were in role as Alfred's chamberlain, and then they introduced me in role as his daughter's chamberlain, being advised by the nobles, the children of the class, in role. And it was when they had to select what suggestions to make for the new ruler and how she should rule, the things she should include and the things that she shouldn't go anywhere near, beautifully revealed their sticky knowledge that they'd been working on.
Oh, thank you. Is it all right if I share your story on the website as a teacher example?
Please do.
Yeah. So people who are watching this now, you can go and find that on the teacher planning examples later.
Right. So that's key 5. So as I say, the rest of the session we're going to look at key 6, which is called Step into a Moment. And the example that we're looking at is Lady Macbeth. Now, in the conversation that we had when Viv and I did this session last weekend with the folks in New Zealand time zone, one of the issues, not one of the issues, one of the points of conversation was around the difference between the way that this key uses a particular text or something that actually is fixed. So as we go through this key, you might think to yourself, well, why use a piece of text? What's the point of that? Well, this key doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't necessarily that you have to use that. It's just that this key does that. So if you wanted to use this method, this strategy, without using a piece of text, you could. So we'll come to it in a minute, and it'll make perfect sense. So here are the steps. So imagine that the class have been studying the play Macbeth, and we've got to the part in the play where Lady Macbeth is washing her hands. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but after the death of the king, there's a murder in the play of Duncan, who's the king of Scotland, and he's killed in Macbeth's castle, and it's a great crime. This is a terrible crime. And look, Lady Macbeth is constantly washing her hands, and this is something that becomes a kind of motif. So in this example, that's what we're exploring with the students. So what the next step in the key says, well, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to represent Lady Macbeth. And at this point, I'm just doing this, which is what I'm sort of demonstrating to you at the moment. And then I'll stop. And then I say, what's she up to? Or something similar. What can you see? What do you notice? What's she up to? Something around those kind of lines, which is an introduction for the students to talk about their thoughts by focusing on that particular action. So I'm going to invite you to do the same. So if you could sort of join in and just say, just say you can do the action if you like, but more importantly, it's your thoughts. You know, what's she up to?
I noticed that while you were rubbing, there was only one time when you actually looked at your hands. You were rubbing without looking, like almost like slightly possessed, and then your eyes went down to your hands, and then you carried on. So like you paused for a moment, and then you looked back down at them. That that stuck out for me.
Okay.
I think it also, I was thinking how it seemed obsessive. I mean, it's hard to divorce myself from knowing the story, but just looking at action, it seems obsessive. Like you'd think if you were truly washing your hands, you would be done with it. But there was this, repetitive motion.
There's also where they are in front of his body, like, because when you're washing your hands, you usually hold them away from yourself. But I know we're on a screen, but we're going to read what it is that we're seeing, and they're actually quite close up to his face, and that gives you that sort of like, it's not a naturalistic hand washing. It's not like dum, da, da, dum, da, da, is it? It's not that. It's so not that.
Claire? Join in.
Notice.
You know how this works.
Yeah, I agree with everything they were saying about it. I thought the intensity and like the obsessiveness of it, like you would just wash your hands under the sink and not really think much about it, and then turn the tap kind of thing. She's really, really scrubbing. A bit like we did during COVID.
Yeah.
Like every finger, all of that. So there's obviously something underlying there. It'd make the children think, why is she still doing it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what Claire's just done is what kids will do as well, is this is what Bowell and Heap call the connection frame. So we might not know anything about kings and castles, especially if we're New Zealand kids, but we do know about washing our hands, and they're going to make connections to their own experience of that. And I've done that too in COVID, and yeah. There's Lorraine. Hello.
Lorraine, Casino.
Yeah.
And
have you got something to add, Lorraine?
Yeah, it's quite funny, maybe because I've just woken up. I find it quite different from quite a lot of you, what I took from it. I was reminded of COVID, of course, but I actually find it wasn't obsessive in a sense. It was more dreamlike. It was quite slow, because I was thinking if you do wash your hands, you actually do scrub a wee bit or whatever. And it was quite other than that, I felt it was sort of slightly dreamy, and as if he wasn't aware of what he was doing. And I know, as I think it was Elaine said, it's very difficult not to know. But yes, that was my observation, that it was slow and sort of distracted almost.
Yeah, what gave you distracted? What?
Because again, this is partly knowledge of the text, but he wasn't looking at his hands. He looked at the end, but until the end, he was washing his hands, and I think when we wash our hands, mostly we look at them. So that was, I think that was what it was that made it look distracted to me, was that he didn't look at his hands until the end. I didn't fully look at them. Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, so interesting. Sorry, I'm going to go a little bit meta again.
You say what you're going to say, Viv, because I'm gonna do a little summary. So you say what you were going to.
I was just going to do that commentary thing like we do. So what I did there, Lorraine, was you did your interpretation, and then as teacher, I said, where did you get that? What made you see that? And then that took you back a step from interpretation to the description, the how you'd got that. And then we're trying to do that as teachers, because I'm sure Tim's going to talk about this, but we tend to leap straight to interpretation. So a question we're always trying to slow this down and say, oh, okay. So I often say, what's the body doing that makes you think that, or where are you seeing that? And what you gave was quite a detailed reaching for words. And that's a really important part of this key. Sorry, Tim, that's probably what you were going to say.
No, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was going to say. So it's so interesting, because when Viv did this last week, she had a completely different action, and I was sitting in the position of being the person observing the action, but actually doing the action. I tried to do as little thinking as I possibly could. I tried actually not to do very much, because it's not acting this, in the sense that I suppose we use with that word, the sense that I've got something in my head that I'm trying to convey. I think it's more that you want the focus to be on the action, not on the acting, as it were. It's that by being almost, I don't know how I was. I can't even remember how I was, because I was trying to be as neutral as possible, because I know the play as well as you do. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to be like this. And I want to be kind of obvious about it. I want to be sort of, to allow it to be open to interpretation. What is so interesting is that so many different interpretations from the same simple action. And as Viv says, this is the key really right here, is that if you don't spend the time looking at it and analysing it and talking about it and describing it, you miss that, because we're very keen, aren't we, to move into the story. We're very keen to sort of move onto characters and narrative and interpretation and all the rest of it. Whereas we don't spend that much time actually looking and describing and seeing what's in front of our eyes. And that's something that Viv and I have really sort of thought about in the book, is just to slow things down and say, just spend some time on that. All the other bits are coming, and that's fine, and we'll get there in a minute. But just right now, what do you make of that? And as we've just demonstrated, lots and lots of ways of interpreting that and describing it and seeing it differently.
And that's the difference, I think, with the questions that you ask. So on the screen we've got, what is she up to? That's an invitation to interpret, isn't it, in a way? What do you notice? What are you seeing is a different question. So the questions that we ask are crucial in teasing out the responses, that because we've got two realities going on. We've got the classroom reality and we've got the story. And in a sense, what's she up to is a question about the story. What do you notice? What are you seeing? What's the body doing is a question about how that story is being created. So this is very meta. It's very literacy, actually. It's how meaning is being made. And we've got the opportunity to question on both. So really thinking about the words that are coming out your mouth as teacher will help tease that out. That's
Any,
a lot for 6 o'clock
any,
in the morning.
yeah. Any thoughts, any questions on that? John, have you got some thoughts on that?
I don't know who it was who said this to me, but somewhere early in my teaching life, it was when the drama's going well, slow it down, as you say, and then even when it's not going well, don't necessarily speed it up. You can move on to different things, different actions or different inferences, but you haven't got to gallop. Even if the temptation, as you said, is so strong to move into narrative and move into conclusion. And then, of course, it's over. So milk it while you got it.
Yeah, yeah. And Dorothy Escott called it the cool strip. I don't know if it's part of the same idea, isn't it? Is that because as you say, if you're in a hot spot and things aren't going quite the way you thought, temptation is to kind of go, oh well, we'll just move on. But actually, sometimes, as you say, the better thing is just to maybe just shut up, just leave a moment's pause or thought or just kind of emptiness, because there's a chance that something might happen in that. Whereas if you just go straight on, then you miss the chance, I think. And Elaine.
I also think that we often, as teachers, if we're teaching, literature, might ask the question, what are the characters' motivations? What's going on internally? And asking students to try to draw evidence from the text. But here, I feel like it's the embodiment of it really allows it. I mean, because I do feel like that action reflected an internal state. And so asking students to read the image or read the action and then to say, to interpret that, but to say, what do you see that makes you say that? So it's taking it out of the text and embodying it, which is very effective.
Which is what good writers do. Is what Dorothy did in that previous story. She didn't say the little boy was so excited to show off the seal. She didn't say excited. She said holding the seal high as he ran so that everyone could see it. That's what the body's doing. So that's what good writers do. And that's what we're kind of teaching students to do through this key. It's certainly changed my own writing and my own appreciation of literature that I read to understand that show not tell thing.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to the next step. So in step 5, repeat the action, but this time we use a word that's from the text. So this is the step that last time we were talking about in the New Zealand workshop, and about whether this is strictly necessary, but you can do it with or without. But we're doing the play, and there is a piece of text. So the text says, "Yet, who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him?" And then you come out, back out of roll again, and then ask the question, what do you make of that? So once again, I'm going to invite you to join in, really. Yet, who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him?
I think you get some gasps and some shocks because they're with the mention of blood, and if it depends how much they know about the story at this point, the play at this point, and if they don't know about this part of the play, and they're washing their hands, they're going to expect, oh, soap, sanitizer, well, blood, what? It would be quite shocking. It would be a really good shocking moment. It really draw them in. You get those really good gasps when you do a really good mantle.
Right. So here's the question then, Lisa. When would you use this this key in the way that it's written here, this example, would you use it? Would you have read the play first? Would they have watched the play? Or would you do this before they start learning about the play? Would you do it just completely without even telling them that they're going to be studying Macbeth? How do you feel? There's no right answer, by the way. I'm just interested in how you do it.
You could use it in any of those moments, really. I think it would be good for them to have some context about what they're learning. Maybe Lady Macbeth, they haven't been introduced to that character yet, you know, or I don't know. I don't know really, but I'd say it would work at any point. Really good hook to draw them in. But then if they know about the characters and a bit more information, then it will just, you know, embed that and get them really into the play story.
Yeah, because I'd only assumed, I don't know about Viv, but I'd only assumed really about using this until the moment you just said that, of doing it while as a study of the play, as the children are studying the play. I hadn't thought about it as using it as a hook, as a kind of just starting and saying, here's a character from a play. I'm not going to tell you anything about them. Just see what you notice about what they're doing. And
Sounds
then
a lot
say
like
the line.
Encounter Someone.
Yeah, it would have been, wouldn't it? It would be. It would be much closer to that. But again, with not necessarily with the line. So who would have thought the old man had so much blood in him? And that, as you say, that would have, you'd have heard gasps, wouldn't you? That would be. This is going quite a dark place. All right.
I was very struck when you did it. Yeah, it's so, as you say, Tim, it's so interesting for us to experience the key as a participant because we're like being inside them as teachers so much. But just watching you now on the screen, I was very, very struck by the humanity in your hands, I think is the way I'd put it. Because you did that twice, and the first time you repeated the action, and the second time you just said the line, and there's a world of difference with the line on its own and with the action. And there was something, I can't really put this in words, but there was something about you looking at your hands and saying the old man that really brought to mind the humanity of the old man, because your hands were like his hands. I don't know if other people got that. Did you get that? It was like, this is flesh in front of me. These are these hands. And then the second time when you said the line without the hands, it was like worlds different, like really striking to me. Yeah. So, and I think that's because the first time we did it, you invited us to watch in such close detail that the second time we were like, I was, might be just early morning wired behavior, but I was really tuned in on what you were doing with your eyes and your hands. And so I was reading, like my brain was fizzing, reading meaning into every little thing. Like, oh, he just glanced at his thumb. Oh, he just, like, I don't think you're aware as a teacher of how much we take that invitation to really look. I mean, is this just me, or are other people feeling this, finding this as well? The second time was, yeah.
I think the thing is that, again, I don't know where I quite got this from, but I'm pretty sure it was from Luke, that the idea that in drama everything becomes significant. So if you take the hands out, then that's significant. If the hands are in, and the way that the hands, you're looking at the hands, and as Lorraine said, the kind of completely unintentional or unconscious dreaminess about it is something that happens because of the way that people interact with it, because it is a frame. This is how drama works, isn't it? Is it everything becomes significant, everything becomes important. So if the hands are there, and I say, who would have thought the old man had so much blood in him? And even the way I say it becomes really significant, doesn't it? Yeah. And that's what, obviously, one of the things that we're trying to teach the kids. And I think, Elaine, you know, this thing about not talking about the motivations, not talking about what's going on inside their head. It's not to say that you don't, or you can't, or you shouldn't, but by not doing that and just concentrating on this simple action and these simple words, you're asking them to look at this play or look at this particular moment for everything that they can from very little information, I think.
But I think it also is looking at it from, you're looking at a human being, you know? I mean, I think often when it's in text, or even if it were on a stage or on a screen, you're removed from it. And here, I mean, I like the idea of putting a frame around it, because it's almost like if you frame out everything else, you really can focus on this very intimate moment, and what you see is a human being, you know. And that's what I think is the beauty of using drama in the classroom, is that it brings the human element to everything that we're studying. And here you're face to face with a human being who, I mean, this line is, you know, I mean, I almost now have some sympathy, you know, for her thing, like confronting what all this blood, you know, and what she's done.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's an incredible introduction to the play before studying it in any form, because I wouldn't have thought that until looking at this line in isolation in that way, because it is the play. That's the play. That's the play, that the nastiest person in a way has found her humanity.
Right.
And it's so prosaic as a line. Like, that's the gasp almost, like, because you're just going, oh, who would have thought it would have taken this long for the bus to come? You know?
Right.
It's like, who would have thought? And then you get old man and so much blood in him. It's just insane. It's just such a punch.
I'm getting that too now, Lorraine. By separating out, sorry, this is really going off in my head, but by separating out the action and the words, we're also invited to look at the words, aren't we? Really look at the words. And because you put them up on the slide, I think that's great. When you said this is the play, I suddenly thought, yeah, even in that line, who would have thought? That whole thing of them thinking they've got the future sussed, thinking they're all safe because of what the witches have said, and then being sideswiped by the forces, the primal forces outside of their control. And yeah, the whole play is in this sentence, even that sense of time and being sideswiped. Yeah, because the play is as much about their arrogance and their asserting of power over another person, and how that does not lead to success, and her little, you know, her frailness and her own humanity is in this sentence as well. So yeah, this key really invites us to tease out fine details, doesn't it?
I think that's such a pardon me, a really good note for writing as well with younger people and older people. The business of, you know, so often I see the story mountain, and you know, the story mountain is there to give a structure, but quite often I need to scream a little bit about the story mountain and go find the action and begin at something that's going to hold me. And maybe in active work, what I might do now, having listened, you know, Lisa, to what you were saying about it holding so much, is to see if I can tease some of the children into inventing their own action moments with inference inside them, see what they come up with, freedom to try and find something which says something, and something that needs investigating, because this surely does.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Yeah, Shakespeare was quite good, eh? I think we're agreed on that.
Well, the next step, if you go back to something that Elaine was saying about the frame and the way that we're using it, and Zoom does this really well, is that it's kind of like a close-up. If you lean close to the camera and bring your hands in close, it's like how a film works. You can imagine a director, can't you? Say, well, let's get a super close up, you know, of the hands and then the eyes, and And that's how films work. And if you ask the children to focus on the hands and you create that frame, and they can put everything else out of the space. Well, imagine then that this next step is kind of moving the camera back, and then it starts to reveal more of the scene. So the location, where do you think would be a good place in the story for this to happen? Who or what might be close by? So we've got the action, which is something that is often done in the play, and it obviously makes sense. And it says about her washing her hands constantly. And then we've got the line, which is taken directly from the play. But now we can start innovating a bit and talking about how we might visualize this. And this is the kind of the story writing bit, the creative bit, really. So whereabouts do you think would be a good place for this to happen? This moment when she's washing her hands and she's saying to her, who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him?
I guess that if it's people who don't know the context of the play, it could take all sorts of places. I was just having a go in my head, and I found a bedroom with an elderly man who has died, and and a care worker beside him.
Yes. Well, of course, this goes back to what Lisa was saying earlier about when do we use this? Is this used at the beginning before the children know anything about the play, or is it something that we do when they've been studying the play for a while, so they know it's set in a castle, for example? And it just illustrated, John, if you don't know what the play is, you've just got this line and this action, your mind kind of goes off on all kinds of tangents, doesn't it? And you've got a whole play there, this care worker and anyway, in this bedroom. Lorraine, what were you thinking?
Yeah, because there's nothing to indicate that she's done anything, has done anything wrong or whatever. So I love that the care worker or someone who's trying to help someone who's been attacked, or it could be in the street, it could be not so much with that if you link it with the hand washing, but yeah, like I think that is the prosaicness of her words. She's not going, woe is me. She's just going, who would have thought? So yes. It could just be that she's close to something that is somebody else's kind of event. She's a helper.
Let's just because we couldn't we? If we decided, if we wanted to do it this way, we just take the line and the action completely out of context and introduce it to the children before they study the play. Then we could do this. That's definitely something that we could do, and we could explore. Children could just have that as the first line, or there's some text, or they imagine there's a story, and then this line comes in, and then they write what happens next, or whatever. So we could start with, where could this be happening? It could be happening in the hospital, on the side of the road, or in a care home, or wherever. But for the purposes of this workshop, so we'll stick with the play itself. So let's imagine that the children have been studying the play. They know who Lady Macbeth is, but they're given the choice here of where they want this part of the play to be happening. So where might you situate this if it's in the castle? Whereabouts in the castle might this part of the play be happening, do you think?
I don't think she's still in the room with the dead body.
No.
I think she's got out of there and she's gone somewhere to clean up. But I don't know where, maybe her own room?
so let's say that then. Let's say that she's back in her own room, her
chamber,
her bedroom, her whatever room. You know,
yeah, I mean the thing about
chamber.
Shakespeare as well is we can set it wherever. Yeah,
Sure.
it's not. It could be a castle. It's probably important for us to know whether it's like a 21st century castle with
Right.
plumbing or an old medieval one where she'd have to be washing in the basin and, you know, pouring the water out of a jug, or even having called a servant to go and get it for her. Those are all very different pictures in my head. I'm kind of going back into the olden days, but yeah, but I think if you're talking location, I'm seeing her back in her room, I think, because she's gone back to her sanctuary where she feels like she can be safe.
Right. Okay.
I'm thinking she's possibly like by a stream or something. Like she's run away, like beyond, you know, the living quarters in case somebody comes back, and she's been found. So maybe she's like gone into the woods kind of thing.
Like that.
And she's at a stream. And she's at a stream, maybe knelt by the stream.
Oh, I like that one.
Looking at a reflection in the water or something like that. Contemplating what's just happened. And
yeah, I like that one. Let's go with that one.
That changes it completely, doesn't it? In my mind, the way I was seeing it suddenly was completely different. That was really right. So are we all agreed then? Just for now, we're going to go with Claire's idea that she's rushed down to the stream and she's plunged her hands into the cold water. And so who's
there's a vulnerability in that?
Who or what might be close by? Is there anyone? Has she managed to get away on her own, or is there someone calling her name, or is what I don't know. Just do the same thing.
Okay. There'd be animals looking at her, but they're not close by. They're not around her, you know, comforting her.
No, but they're within her.
The eyes of the animals just kind of watching from the tree.
Okay. All right. So maybe people then.
Maybe the animals are afraid of her. Maybe they, you know, they have a sense.
Smell the blood.
They sense her evil deed. Maybe they're both.
Yes. Yeah. They've scarpered away and don't want to be near her. So
I'm also imagining. Sorry.
Go on. No, don't say sorry.
I'm also imagining that she's got a dress caught on some like a big log or something on the way. So maybe nearby is a piece of her clothing that might be found at a later time.
This is it. This is how it works, isn't it? So if I read the next set of steps, you've pretty much done it now. So this is, what sounds do you suppose you might hear, or she might hear, or we might hear? Where might the light be coming from? What about the darkness? Where might there be darkness? And what's moving and what's still? So you've introduced that you know, by the way that you spoke there, you created this sense of a before of her running, the movement of her running. Now, did as she was running, just go through the light and the darkness elements? So can you see her running? She's in her dress. She's out of control. So where's the, and Claire, you said she's running through the forest. She's running through the woods. So can people see the light? Where's the light coming from?
It's not a lot of it. It's pretty dark, but
it's dark. So the wood's dark.
There might be light.
Like the canopy of the trees. So it's like speckled light coming through.
Right.
And there might be some back at the castle, just far in the distance, some firelight or torchlight, but it's mostly
light
dark.
from the castle behind her as she's leaving and going through the darkness of the wood, and then the dappled light through the canopy.
And there'd be some on the water, wouldn't there? As she is she running, or is she washing her hands in the water? What's the moment?
she'd fallen to her knees, I think Claire said. And Lorraine, what were you going to say?
Oh, just that I'm seeing like there might be moonlight if it's night. We don't know if it's nighttime or not, but there's, you know, it might be moonlight reflected or on the water or just sort of coming through. But I also was thinking what they was saying about the way light comes out of a building in a kind of like a shape rather than
yeah.
I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like a spotlight kind of thing.
Yeah.
From the window rather than general diffuse light.
So also, if it's daytime or nighttime, that does make quite a difference, doesn't it?
I'm seeing nighttime. I think it is nighttime. She kills him at nighttime. Yeah, in the play.
Okay. Okay, but other people
He's
might
asleep.
have a different view.
He's asleep in bed. It's a given.
He was, yeah.
I'm not giving up.
We don't know how soon after his murder this is happening, do we? We don't know if it's immediately or, you know, in the play it says that she's sort of racked with this for a while after it, isn't it? I think there's a few days, isn't it? She died.
Which is why, for me, there may be no blood left on her hands at all, but she sees it, you know, that and the power of trying to erase it, even though it's really no longer there, but it feels there.
That's right.
She says out, down, spot, isn't she? Doesn't she say that? Isn't that another line?
That's
washing and washing. There's nothing there, and she's going, you know.
Yeah, I think there's two places.
That's a salty sea to wash it away or something, isn't there? There's a line.
Yeah, it's two different places. There's one immediately afterwards and one quite a bit later to show that she's still obsessing over. Yeah. So
that might make a difference. But the other thing that occurs to me in the invention of Claire's of the river or the water, the water is the idea of reflection. So how might we use the idea of or the metaphor of a reflection? What sort of things come to mind when you?
But she's seeing herself. So like maybe she's seeing herself. She's seeing what she's done. I mean, she doesn't kill him. Her husband. She gets her husband to kill him. That's the thing about the deflect. You know, she's removed from it until they kill the other lady and all her kids. I think that's what sends it off. You know, into. So the reflection. Claire's idea of the stream, I think, is lovely because she's seeing herself.
Yeah.
Sort of shadow.
And this is the stuff that I love working with kids, because it's this language, isn't it? You see the use of reflection constantly in film, and TV. They use it all the time as a metaphor, the way of communicating the sense of awareness of self and guilt and all those other things that you can include in their writing. So, you know, the idea of coming down to the river and falling on her knees and pushing her hands into the water. And as she lifts her hands, she looks back down into the water and sees herself rippled, staring back, eyes accusing. Then that's writing, isn't it? That's just come from that idea that Claire had, that you could just take that idea and riff with it and start to explore it. And we're not so far away from the play. The play's still there. We haven't left the play behind. We're still exploring the themes and the ideas and the characters in the play, but it's our interpretation of it.
I think that's really exciting. So often we're told, I haven't got time to do this. I haven't got, I've got so much to get into the teaching sessions that I've got. But this is an enabler rather than a confronter.
Go on. So what does that mean?
I mean by that, the ripple effect, the thing that's happening in the middle of a pond and what happens as the ripples go out. You could use that as a diagrammatic investigation of the whole play and take a moment like this and look at cause and effect. And that would be something that you could do with perhaps with older people, but not necessarily so. And it would demonstrate the through line of the action of the piece, and you could identify crucial moments depending on the power of the ripple at any one time.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So you said something about an enabler different to a confronter, and I thought you were talking about the teacher when you were saying that. Was that, or a
I was
teaching
talking about,
technique?
teacher and process, that investigating using drama inquiry around a particular image enables you to see the play in a clearer light, rather than having to go, here's the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end. This is the action of the piece. This is what holds the narrative line together.
Right. And as Lorraine said, it's the pivot point, isn't it? It's the point where the whole play shifts from one to something else.
The other way in which I feel like this key is an enabler rather than a confronter is that it enables us to see the play as it was written, rather than confronting that play, rather than shifting or confronting that play. And I think that's why I'm really glad, Tim, you took us down the path of imagining that we were studying the play and we were in that context, because with some, Shakespeare is created and is a cultural icon that we are invited to play around with. You know, Shakespeare's contexts are for exploring, rewriting, playing with, discarding bits of, making a whole new, thing about. So they're not precious and they're not to be held as they are. In fact, they're the opposite. But other texts, are like the one we explore in the New Zealand example, are not for doing that with. And so this key has this way of enabling the text to be itself, if we use it in the way that we just have. Nothing's changed in the text. It kind of preserves the narrative, the characters, the internal things as they were written. It's very clever, this key, because what it does is paint the scene around the action rather than changing any of the action. And for some texts, that's really important. And perhaps you could argue that the first time you encounter the text, you need to learn Shakespeare before you do all those other experimental things with it. So what is special about this key, the way that we're doing it now, it is that it enables rather than confronts the text as well. It holds the text up whole. And I think that's come clear to me the more that I've used it with cultural stories or history, where we go into that more in the New Zealand workshop. But that enabling, not confronting, is a defining feature here, I think, because we're only taking one tiny little bit that was already in the text anyway. We haven't added any words or any action. We've just added flavor and detail and mood and tone.
Brilliant. Wow. We're only halfway through the key. Actually, the rest of the key kind of pretty much speaks for itself. It's kind of a continuation of what we've been doing, really. And as was happened in the last workshop, it's illustrative, really, of how the once you break out from the initial action and then you start to develop the world around it, how quickly that happens and how much there is to build on there. So I'm not intending to go through the rest of the steps. You can read them yourself in the book. And we've done an awful lot of discussion and reflection around this already. I'm mindful of the time. It's Sunday night or Monday morning, so I'm not intending to go on past the time that we said we'd finish. But are there any thoughts or anything else that people wanted to say before I wrap up?
Well, I've just come on and I just want to thank you a lot. Like I was
Thanks, Robin.
In the New Zealand. So I'm Robin from Waiheke, New Zealand. The thing that I think that's so important about all of this is that you're doing it in dialogue with the young people. And so the thing is that it's sort of like they're learning off each other. And I think that's really key for me. Like there's so many times where the teacher is up in the front of the room. And for me, it's like working it all in the community of the classroom. So I think that's what I'm hearing in both workshops now. Thanks.
Thanks, Robin. Appreciate that. So, just trying to remember. So just to point everybody at the resources section of the website. So on that, the page that goes with this key, both the one for the New Zealand example and the UK, well, the Shakespeare example, there are resources on there and other material that you can use. And we've gone through that really. I'm just going through the rest of the slides. And there's the section on the website for including planning. And thank you, John, for agreeing to have your planning on there. If anybody's got anything that they'd like to share, please just ping it over to us by email. It can be in any form. It could be just notes, or it could be written up, or it could include photographs or materials or not. It's absolutely fine. It's just a place, really, a repository for ideas and for teachers to, you know, it's not designed as being perfect. It's not that at all. And the next session is on the 5th of May, and I think, Viv, that will happen on the same day and won't be split like this one was over 2 weekends. That was to do with Easter. And we'll be looking at Key 7, which is watch a drawing, which is great fun. So if you get the chance to use Step Into a Moment, that would be great. If you could come along to that and share what you did, that would be brilliant. If not to worry. And that's it. And I've gone over 1 minute, which is not great. It's been lovely seeing you all again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. And
Thank
thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Tim. Thanks, Tim.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Kate. Bye.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for coming.